In Indonesia, as many as 500 bodies were being washed onto the shores 2 months after the tsunami. And behind the Buddhist temple in Khao Lak in Thailand, 1,400 bodies still lie in refrigerated containers, waiting to be identified. I found it hard to understand how so many people could have been killed in Khao Lak, which is a relatively small area. But then, when I picked up an ordinary tourist map, I began to understand why. Because what you see are many, many hotels and resorts jammed into this small area, one after the other. So when the tsunami wave came in, it left 4,000 people dead. The Bang Muang temple at Takwapa was a temporary mortuary. 2,000 bodies were brought here and laid out in the car park. A few bottles of disinfectant are all that remain. In a building behind the temple, the shrouds that were used to cover the corpses are being taken away.
When I was going to the temple, we were looking through all the dead people, trying to identify some of them. And we had a whole list of people missing, all different stories really. I mean, we had what people were wearing, what type of hair they had, all this type of thing. But what people didn't realize was when you've been drowned and you've been in the sun for a day or two, you can't really tell whether you're Asian or Caucasian. Yeah, you couldn't tell if people had blonde hair or black hair was, within a couple of days. It's a hard feeling, but I think the smell for me was the hardest thing, the smell of the dead bodies. And they were also spraying the formaldehyde that preserves the bodies. They normally, I think they inject it or they do it a proper way in a mortuary, but of course here there was thousands of bodies, so they were just literally spraying it on.
At home in England, Liz and Alan Jones finally received news of their daughter Charlotte.
I suppose it must have been about 3 weeks later we got a photograph sent via the website from a volunteer who's working in Phuket hospitals, and we'd posted Charlotte's details everywhere, and the main thing was her tattoo. And this body had a lot of similarities to Charlotte, and so they sent it to us.
I could see the tattoo very clearly, and I took some photos of the swimming costume she had, a ring she was wearing, and a string she had around her ankle.
It was quite a distressing photograph, and at first people wouldn't let me see it, but I had to see it. So I knew it was her right then, but it was another 6 weeks before we actually got her body back.
We had 2 Christian events here in Petersfield. We had a memorial service, which is wonderful, and when we were able to bring her home a funeral, one might have assumed that would have brought me as closer to Church of England. But that doesn't seek to offer any answers to me and seek any understanding, so both Liz and I are beginning to explore Buddhism.
I know that the Thai people believe in wandering ghosts, and I actually thought that maybe if she died so suddenly and so quickly, she wouldn't realise she was dead. And I had to get her there some way, somehow. I firmly believe that we do have a soul, and my concern was looking after her and making sure that wherever her journey was taking her, she got there.
On Khao Lak beach in Thailand, another family from a totally different background had the same feelings. Beside a makeshift altar, shaman priests are calling on spirits. The names of the dead are spelt out in red ink, which signifies prosperity and good luck. Chantra Puija has called on the shaman to release the spirits of her daughter Chutima and her granddaughter Chonlada. Their bodies have not been found. She believes they've become ghosts, and the sea won't give them up. This part of the ceremony locates the place from which the spirits will be released. The medium calls them to receive offerings labeled to prevent other spirits from taking them. When the offerings are burnt, the spirits will be fulfilled. Then they can be led to a heavenly place of rest. To followers of established religions, such ceremonies might seem like superstitious hocus pocus. But however skeptical one is, it gives people like Chantra another means of grieving and picking up the pieces of their lives. In Thailand, there were so many people like Chantra that 1 month after the tsunami, a similar shaman ritual was organized, only on an epic scale, to free thousands of spirits. It's not just the dead whose souls have. Those left behind also need to be freed from their ordeal.
Is there anyone who wants to go to the beach to come here now?
Jane Lopak is a trained therapist. She left her missionary work in Cambodia and came to Thailand because she realized that many of the tsunami survivors would be in crisis.
What I want you to do is think about going into the water and tap the person's shoulder in front of you.
The sea is the livelihood of these people. They are terrified of the sea, they hate the sea, they fear another tsunami every day, every moment of every day. They can't pick up their lives. They can't go back into their fishing boats. They can't have their restaurants on the beach. And this was their livelihood. And if they can't face the sea, then they may as well move to the mountains.
I want you to notice what you feel when I say that. You're going to go into the water right up to here. How scared are you, 0 to 10, about going into the water up to your neck?
Jane's proven technique, which uses desensitization, unlocks people's traumatic experiences and allows them to confront their deepest fears.
Tapping the floor like this.
I don't understand why natural disasters happen. I can waste a lot of time and energy trying to figure that out, whereas that time and energy is probably better spent actually doing something about it. I trust God completely. Don't always understand what he's doing, very often don't understand what he's doing, but I trust that he knows what he's doing. This is a big moment. Okay. This is where we have to watch people very carefully and maybe also do some more desensitization, like this. A lot of the women, particularly mothers who have lost their children, they've been prevented by husbands and fathers, the men, from grieving. It's a very fatalistic belief system that a mother's time with a child has come to an end, and it was meant to come to an end. It's very fatalistic. Let it be. It's always a risk taking them down to the water. You don't know if somebody's going to freak out, whether they're really ready or not. But actually seeing people go into the water, up to their ankles, up to their knees, up to their waist, eventually swim and not want to come out the water, and they themselves can't believe that they're doing this. That is the blessing for me. That's the blessing. You know, if all this, the work, the stress and the anxiety was just to see one person do that, it would be worth it. And we've seen 200 do it so far, and today we'll see a few more do it. People can start now moving forward in bigger strides. It's a tremendous feeling. Makes it all worth it.
Watching Duke, it was hard not to see her experience as a kind of baptism. The woman who emerged from the water was somehow different from the woman who'd gone in.
Number 1!
Science does explain how the tsunami happened, It undermines the notion of an omnipotent God causing a tsunami as a warning or punishment. But even for a scientist like Alan Jones, science is not enough to fulfill what is a fundamental human need, the need to grieve.
That's about the last picture we've got of her on the island.
One of the first noble truths of Buddhism is that there is suffering, and accept suffering and be with that suffering. And that seems to resonate with our circumstances. So I'm beginning to explore what Buddhism might be able to hold for us. One of the fundamental parts of Buddhism is meditation. And I find that quite hard to go to another place in my mind, because when I try, Charlotte's there.
The words of one survivor have stayed with me throughout my journey. He wrote that by surviving the tsunami, he had seen how sudden, terrifying, and meaningless the end could be. Yet, in response to his harrowing experiences, 8 out of every 10 homes in Britain gave money. In a world so divided by the misuse of religion, it reminds us of the compassion that different faiths and cultures can have for each other. Religion may not be able to answer the question of why God sent the tsunami, but it's ironic that an event so terrible has managed to achieve what religious traditions have been trying to do throughout the ages, to unite people from all walks of life in a common humanity.